There we go. So yeah, I thank everyone for coming to the reading, the title of which I'm a little bit hazy on still. The David Has Zoom Pro for a few months reading series, I think, which will continue longer than I expected, which is awesome. I'll do it next semester too. Yeah, so thank you all for joining us on a Friday night. Of course, thanks to my readers for being willing to take part in this experiment. Just so everyone knows, I'll have everybody muted. Whoever's, the reader will be unmuted. That's why, there's no confusion. If you want, you can, yell things out in the chat, whatever you want, praise our wonderful readers in the chat. And that is about that. We have 5 amazing readers. We have Jon Lemay, we have Tom Snarsky, Chloe Martinez, Ryan Vine, and Jessica Cuello. And I'm not sure what else I should tell everybody. All right. So we will start with Jon Lemay, who is an MFA candidate at Syracuse University, where he's an editor-in-chief for Salt Hill Journal. His poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Hobart, Salamander, Juked, Prelude, Bodega, and The Dialogist, and elsewhere, under really fantastic, amazing journals. And his reviews have appeared in Barrel House and Poetry Northwest. Jon also co-hosts Pat and John on Their Best Behavior, a podcast about film and music. And you can find him on Twitter at Jon Lemay and on Instagram at Jon Lemay. All right. So it's all yours, Jon.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for coming. And thanks, David, for hosting this. This is really awesome. Dave and I have worked together pretty closely on Salt Hill because he is our wonderful book designer. I really love his work as well. And it was cool to see that he was doing this series, and it was very generous of him to invite me to do this. So it's nice to know he is as generous and good a person in much the same way he's an incredible writer and educator and graphic designer and book designer as well. So thank you to him. Okay, so I am going to read a smattering of poems. All of my poems are very short, so I'm going to time myself to be cognizant of that, but I'm hopeful I'll be able to get through all of them in around 10 minutes or so. So this first poem, one of my favorite things to do when I'm not sure what to write or what to write about is to take poems that I really love and just write a poem modeled after it in some way, as I'm sure many of us do. And this poem is modeled after a piece by April Bernard called Roy Orbison and John Milton Are Still Dreaming. And this piece is called Lil Peep and John Keats Are Still Dreaming. It wouldn't feel right to have most of what I want. Nobody has died. She's forgiven me. No one says I'm too sad. I'm never left waiting. But that doesn't mean happiness doesn't swell within me every now and then, like the louder half of a siren. And it doesn't mean I need to be saved or solved, because if I wanted someone to unearth me, I would have covered myself with dirt by now. It's just that people leave and take things with them. The flame retreats back into the stovetop, hushing the cord moaning from the kettle. Recently, a girl I was sleeping with told me, I love your body and I love touching it. And I just don't understand how that stopped being true. If I've ever loved touching someone, not a day passes that I don't think about touching them just once more. And that poem is going to be published in the magazine To Peach sometime soon. So if you're interested in hearing or reading that again, it'll be there. So these next 2 poems are kind of like in conversation with one another. They kind of respond to a claim that Max Ritvo made in one of his poems about the extent to which a gun sounds like a kiss. So they're both in some ways like responding to that while engaging in some tropes from different types of film genres. So this first one is called Gangster Film. Sometimes a gun really does sound like a kiss. I'd like to think you're not bored of my suffering, but tired of your own. There are people so lonely they can't imagine sympathy. Not me. I imagine it so well, I start to smell it. It's the smoke rising from a candle that has yet to realize how deformed it's destined to be. It's her perfume when she put up her hair and slip on high-waisted jeans, when she smiled at me as if I was the only person in the whole casino, not just the hotel room. Tell me, which was dark first, the night or the crow? How wonderful to finally be unaccounted for. I'm learning that the half-life of despair is the time it takes a body to decompose in the trunk of a Cadillac. And while you're waiting, your life may start to feel like the longest movie of all time. And on a similar note, this one is called a Western. And other times, a gun doesn't sound like a kiss, because with only 6 bullets in the cylinder, we have none to waste. Out here, everything looks so beautiful, it demands to be touched at every moment. I can't help but wonder if the same can be said for me. To think that, after all we've been through, you're still here, a ghost town in the middle of everywhere. Even after seeing a buffalo saunter toward a mountain of skulls belonging to its own kind, reminding us there will always be a girl to leave behind. I'm worried this has become predictable and unpleasant, like the skin on a vulture's neck. One more thing to remember, if you play a fiddle too well, it becomes a violin. Don't be afraid, no one can die in this saloon. And as for me, I can't die anywhere. I keep trying. And that poem was written while I was listening to the soundtrack for the film, An American Tale, Fievel Goes West, which gives you some insight into my writing process. A really underrated soundtrack by James Horner, oddly enough, of all people. So he's got lots of bangers in lots of interesting places. Okay, so this next poem is called Tin Man Goes to a Rave. And this one will also be published by Salamander in print, which I think is coming out in January. So I'm really excited to get it out there. Okay, Tin Man Goes to a Rave. If I had skin, I'm sure everyone here would be jealous of it. I've learned over the years that you can still hear a heart beating through the sound of heavy rain. Before you ask, this addled mind isn't the codex of suffering you may imagine. Nothing is ever that clear. Earlier today, I snuck down a steep bank to scoop honey from a creek. A wren, yellow and bulbous, asked me for a taste on my walk back. And after I explained how unhealthy that would be for him, he remained perched on my shoulder for another mile. It all felt so close to beautiful, but I couldn't be there forever. And this next poem is called Self-Portrait, in which I am finally myself. I'm working on my thesis for my MFA right now, and a lot of the poems in that are persona poems and self-portraits. And you just heard one that's referenced in this poem, but I guess to fully appreciate this piece, you should know that I also have a poem written from the perspective of Jerry the Mouse. I have a poem called Self-Portrait as the 1991 Detroit Pistons, Self-Portrait as a rodeo clown, and I have a bunch of poems that are written based on the Sorrows of Young Werther. So that's all of that has been written by now, and it is what is causing me to decide, or has caused me to write a poem called Self-Portrait, in which I'm finally myself. Oh, and one other thing. There's a reference on the page. I drew a little box at some point. You'll see why as I read the poem. And I obviously can't render that while reading it. So in order to indicate that section, I'm going to do this, which indicates that there is a box, a little escape hatch. So just be looking for that. Okay. Self-portrait in which I'm finally myself. That's it. I'm through with it all. No more cowboys, no more cartoon mice, no more tin men, no more members of the 1991 Detroit Pistons, no more rodeo clowns, no more suicidal Byronic heroes or the women they annoy half to death. I am ready to admit it's really just me at the center of it all, There's no one else in this poem, though I suppose you're here too. It's only right I welcome you, provided you're willing to stay. But in case you're not, which I understand, I've created an escape hatch large enough for you to crawl through. I see you've left, and now that you're gone, I realize it's very hard to be alone in one of my own poems. And then I have two more quick ones. This one, the final line, as indicated by the title, is a take on something that the filmmaker Harmony Korine said on a David Letterman interview. If you want to watch something that's like a real trip in every sense of the word, watch Harmony Korine's appearances on Late Night, in which he either is on many different substances or that's just the way that he's wired. But anyway, the last line of this poem is a take on something he said, and it's called "Still Life with Variation on a Line" by Harmony Korine. An octopus could never feel happiness and is all the better for it. The Arctic fox feels enough loneliness for the entire world, so he's the best of us all. And how quickly the rest of us forget that one thing we woke up to do. We'd like to think it was love. Luckily, something else is always around the corner. We hope that's love too. Me, it's never that simple. I'm a mercenary. I hide in trees. And then this last one was published in the magazine Bodega a couple months ago. And like the first one I read, this was also written after a poem that I really love by Henri Cole, and it's called Fable. And as I said, this will be my last poem. So thanks to everyone for listening. Fable. Not long ago, I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment by myself, planted among the poplars of Memphis. Nearby, there was a river that flooded at the city's birth, which I only ever saw when I was too drunk to notice anything. Occasionally, there were tornadoes, and I always hid in my dead roommate's closet, making sure to call a friend who would appreciate being my last conversation. When I sat cross-legged on my unframed mattress and failed to write, I let the light from my laptop lick my face, thinking on loss, thinking on love, thinking on solitude, and my eyes burned, loneliness grazing my skin until I was on the brink of laughter, then anguish. But writing this now, partially just to write something, partially because I mean it more than I've ever meant anything, I feel happy. I feel like I could live for a very long time. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you so much, John. I'm going to echo the chat, and we all really love the escape hatch. That's a fantastic idea. You can find a link to John's podcast and more of his work in the chat there. I'll probably post it again in a second, just so we don't lose it. But yeah, thank you so much. Next up, we have Tom Snarsky, who is a math teacher who writes poems. His book, Light Up Swan, is available from Ornithopter Press, and his pamphlet, Complete Sentences, is forthcoming from Broken Sleep.
Thank you so much, David, for putting this all together and for having me, and for everybody who's reading and listening. Thank you all. It's the best way I could imagine ever to end a week. And I was telling a couple of my students that I was going to be reading at this, and they were excited for me. And one student asked, so what poem are you going to read? And I was just like, the singular, that's an idea. So then I stole this student's idea. So I'm actually just going to read one poem. And I think if it's cool, I'll share my screen, which hopefully I should be able to do. I think I can do it. And hopefully, can y'all see that okay? See some gentle nods. Amazing. So I'm going to read a poem. It's in that Broken Sleep pamphlet that's coming out next year, called Complete Sentences, that are poems sort of related to teaching. And you'll see, I guess, why. And I want to thank, before I read the poem, Ashley Elizabeth, who is a great poet and editor who read this poem in situ and gave it some really great feedback that was helpful for me. And so I owe her the world. So this poem is called Coin of Vantage, and it's got an epigraph from Gwendolyn Brooks's great poem, Truth, how that poem opens, which is, "And if sun comes, how shall we greet him? It's 30 minutes until sunset when I will post the picture I took of Lebensweisheit Spielerei. I had been missing the things I usually touched, including that big, unwieldy Faber and Faber collected poems of Wallace Stevens that lived in my car, in the center console, the way poetry could steal a few minutes between tasks, idling in one of America's few remaining parking lots. Hardy har har. The way touch made it more possible to just thumb a poem for a moment, like a protective thimble against the blowback of the world, its repeated needle jabs. This thimble thought brought me to, but first I hope you check out the Wikipedia page for thimbles. It's really the gold standard. Touch pieces, i.e. little talismans of medicine and luck, kings and queens rubbing coins on the heads of the sick to heal them. If it didn't work, then you simply were not faithful enough. It's a short citational road from the touch piece to the mercury dime, famous American instance of same, the god of commerce on a coin, which of course would be the irony here, but it's even better that the front of the mercury dime is really meant to be a picture of Liberty's bust, and everyone just mistook Liberty for Mercury, almost as American a confusion, freedom for the mercurial, God, just think of insurance, as doing your own work on company time, or the brute fact of a parking lot, our flattest terraformation. If the parking lot is the actual physical space I return to the most for writing, then the idea space I return to the most in poems is the sea. I grew up near one and just read for the first time Greta Rolstad's Notes on Sea and Shore. It showed me how much I still have to learn about this craft on its open water. Wikipedia is generous with the terminology for oceans, lakes, rivers, all the lands and land formations incident to them. I learned that a ria is not air or a song, but instead a drowned river valley. Though to see something so close to aria put me in mind of Stevens, cartoonish, operatic, great lover of islands, and a seller of insurance. There are so many names for cliffs. Did you know coin of vantage means, quote, a favorable position for observation or action, end quote? Funny that middle currency re-enters our ear here. And I could have sworn Stevens had a poem actually called Aria, Sharon Olds, but searching, I found instead the "Are you fucking with me" fact that his wife Elsie was the model for the mercury dime, the self-same one, an instance of which I bought on eBay for $1 after the touch piece affair. I carry it with me every day now just to see if, like the other sacred coins of lore, faithfulness helps it to heal. Mine's a 42, so I'm starting with Parts of a World, the Stevens book from that year. It and Sharon Olds, both born in the same revolution while the world was being made violently aware of its parts, to figure out what the fuck exactly the universe is trying to tell me with this confluence. Not all these researches have been done in parking lots. Stevens was a role model in almost nothing except stealing time from work to write. The French say faire de la perruque, I think, literally making of the wig, doing one's own work on company time. I'm writing this now during a class. The kids are in their breakout rooms. I am being the worst version of myself qua teacher, sitting on my remote little shore, all Helen in Egypt. My Achilles, a stubborn seabird. Mersbow's new album, Screaming Dove, is out soon, and not far into Parts of a World, we read, quote, poet, patting more nonsense phoned from the sea, end quote. 3 lines down from a reminder of why Stevens is such a racist disaster, called Gwendolyn Brooks a horrible name, thought Mussolini should take Ethiopia, and yet Gwendolyn Brooks herself casts in 1955 the deciding vote to give an earlier version of the very book in my hands the National Book Award. Is this true? The ceremony is 3 months after the murder of Emmett Till, Sharon Olds' aria for Trayvon Martin pouring like hot milk from the future, and whiteness lets me mark time like this, do my little historiography of poetry and grief, and who won what awards and when, defer to gilded poets like Stevens or Bronk, who worked unfettered in, quote, snug unawareness, end quote, Brooks again. Built their arcs before 9, after 5, perchance between, only had sense and meaning to worry about. Were not scared of money or property, didn't have to be. Greta's poem of the sea begins, quote, "As for gold's effect on the first white men on this continent, a Nahuatlan scribe said they fingered it as if their hearts were illumined and made new." That's right, Basil. My removal of the italics. My 42 Mercury hums from its dime bag in my wallet. Entitlement of touch, of holding, a need to seal off from others. Greta's poem continues, quote, "We are all unmoored," unquote, sure. But the mooring of starting out is imperfectly shared in America of its white lines and parking lots, its spotty healthcare coverage and sunsets, today's instance of which is 2 minutes earlier than yesterday's. Stevens's blue-green pines, Bronx blue spruces watch the change, those slow centuries of sun. Range Rover Sentinel. A headline from last year reads, quote, "The market for bulletproof vehicles is exploding," end quote. All that ballistic steel plating with beautiful souls inside. Do you think a teacher could afford a bulletproof car? Just smudge the Stevens Collected's white cover with oil grease because Christy and I changed the driver rear tire on my 2003 Toyota Camry XLE, the first and only car I've ever bought with teaching money, very susceptible to gunfire. Luckily, with COVID, remote learning, a school shooting would require very ambitious bullets. Maybe I'd be lucky and get fired on with my Mercury dime in my breast pocket. So just like with Roosevelt's notes in Glass's case, I'd be okay. Teach an 80-minute class after hell 84. This poem is now very current events. The event being one long unfurling American violence, and the current being mitigated by the splitting of the RIA, hopping Delta Islands on a pogo stick. Look carefully. It's nearly 5:55. The sunset's coming. Do you see it from your little white cliff removed from all the rushing of the water? Do you see it from your little white cliff? Do you? And if you do see it, what are you and your shiny coin, not of gold, going to do about it? About the fact that all my friends don't have insurance, about the regulation of weights and rates in the marketplace, Jack Sharpless, to which must be lent discerning personal attention, Sharpless again, all these poets dying young. Sharpless at 38, Ralstad at 24, Snarsky at TBD, Brooks at 83, still too soon. Louise Glick agreed with Bonfoy, a poet is a joke of a thing to call yourself. You save it for your heroes, climbing their thin-limbed trees in the dark. Balancing enough to report what Brooks somewhere calls tender grandeur. The golden light on the wave crests, the purple martins, a screaming dove. About halfway through parts of a world, we have 2 people, 3 horses, an ox in the sun, the waves together in the sea. Compare the Bronx of midsummer. In certain pictures, envied landscapes are seen through a window, maybe like quotation marks. Do you think Bronx ever really found love in his life? Love subs in for art almost naturally in his last poem. Love isn't made, it's in the world, almost unseen, but found existent there. Like gentle crushes, like risk, like an Ashrita Furman Guinness World Record for watermelon sliced on the stomach in 1 minute. The tragedy of only having an emoji for watermelon that is already sliced up, the little seeds like Delta Islands amidst embarrassment. River Red. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I think I know, I associate your work more with, short poems, but that was amazing. All right. So next up, we have Chloe Martinez, who is a poet and scholar of South Asian religions. She is the author of 10,000 Selves and the chapbook Corner Shrine. Her poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Agni, Plowshares, Prairie Schooner, Tri-Quarterly, Shenandoah, and elsewhere. She works at Claremont McKenna College, and I will link you to her website and her book. Thank you, Chloe.
Thank you. So good to be here. And you may see a multiplicity of Chloes in here. I had a couple of friends text me they couldn't get in. I sent them my link and they've all turned up as Chloes. So those are all me here in the audience too. Thanks for being here, everybody. I spent a lot of my day today trying to convince my 6-year-old to get her vaccine, which the last I heard, it still hadn't happened. So I'm going to read some motherhood poems today because I need to. This is from my brand new book, just came out about a month ago, 10,000 Selves. Very happy to have it in the world. And this poem came out a little while ago in Shenandoah, and it's called Motherhood, a Map. And there's a dog. Okay. Hopefully you can't hear any of the noise. There's like a racetrack around the corner that I'm suddenly hearing. It's usually quiet here. Motherhood, a map. You are here, abject, bereft, clear, all-seeing, also see-through, disheveled, euphoric, enervated, flushed, faint, fierce, and also generous, gushing milk and patience, goddess-like, even while grieving. What? Your good, distant self. Heavy, heaving, helper, holder of hands or heads, you'll appear to some idiots, indignant, indigent, icky. You'll ignore cries, which is not to say you won't hear them. No, your rabbit ears will make you jumpy, jealous of the free world, animal you'll grow keen, willing to kill almost, kept in the kennel of loving a small, helpless thing so helplessly that you'd carry your cub, kindred, kinder, through the streets in your very teeth. Kidded, a dual citizen, luscious and land-bound, i.e. mother, i.e. never not, owned, overcommitted, overwhelmed, overcome, proud, put upon, pissed off, playful, prodding, plotting, quiet, quaint, queer, really reduced, repetitive, regulated by needs not your own, and yet radiant sometimes, smitten, sticky, sated, stressed, saintly, severe, tired, 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 texting too much, teary, your best friend, far away on the other end of the line. She's been through the trial by fire too, and you like to call yourselves triumphant, but there's no real teleology here. You're upside down, underneath, undone, vexed, vague, various. You are a we, wived, weaponized, wizened, undeniably witchy, wondrous. And aren't you exhausted being always on exhibit, extra human, exiled? Yawn, yowl, yelp, and yet zip up, zone out, zero in. Yes, you're zonked, but you're also the ziggurat, juggernaut, zero sum, zigzag. You vibrate, turn, Zohar, azure, zenith. Magic, you toss missives through the hedges of yourself, amazed, amaze. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better about all the time I spent today in the hallway of the pharmacist, with people just looking at me pityingly. Oh, my small dragon was like, no, it's not gonna happen. That was today. Okay, so I'm gonna read maybe a not motherhood poem instead. I'm in the garden, so I'm gonna read a nature poem. This is called The Movement. The painted ladies come through, moving in waves, little fluttering rivulets cutting through the river delta of the sky. Not a cloud, not exactly a shadow, not a straight line among them, and yet a definite direction. You stand in the middle of the space between buildings, your takeaway lunch container in one hand, and in the other, the idea of progress, the temporary understanding that there could be a distinct and also unified movement towards. The sky is an electric shade of blue. The truth is they won't make it, not all, not the whole way. So along the route, they lay eggs, lay down, end. Hatching later, new beings pick up an invisible thread and just continue as if their parents' deaths were a mere rest stop along the way, which apparently they were. Don't cry, you are at your place of employment. Make your way to privacy. Because you are human, only there may you be moved. Okay, I'm gonna read. Oh, what do I want to read today? I decided and then I changed my mind. All right, I'm gonna read one other kid poem and a poem about strangers. A bunch of the poems in this book are called mandalas. Along with being a poet, I'm a scholar of South Asian religions, and I started writing these poems that I was thinking about as kind of like I don't know, mimicking or using the idea of the mandala, a meditative circle that you can walk through. And it is also sort of a microcosm, right? Tibetan Buddhist mandalas are both an aid to meditation, and they're also kind of like a map of the universe. So I have a lot of mandala poems in here. This is one of them. And I don't know if that explanation explains the poem at all. I don't think it does. Mandala of the Nature Center Sleepover. There is pizza, the fish that annoyed us during the day. Sorry, the fish that ignored us during the day now seem to take an interest. Maybe we imagine it. The seahorses are holding hands with their curly tails. There is one small octopus asleep in a rock cave, eye closed, mysterious heart engine pumping visibly. There's a craft project, a scavenger hunt. The children and their adults wander back and forth, the moray eel opening and shutting his mouth in a terrifying corner. And then we notice the octopus has awakened. She curls and uncurls, tentacle cake walks across the glass wall, then rockets herself through the water. And the way she moves doesn't say escape or hunger, though once we see her false eye spots glow bright blue as if, her label says, under threat. But that color fades, and she goes on, far beyond easy explanations, a dance of being alive in a body, a dance of the body alive. The octopus is unlike us. The octopus is more like us than we can explain. What I mean is the multiplicity of her suction cups, unimaginable, and yet right here before our eyes, the truth, beauty. We stand in a semicircle before her tank, watching for as long as the octopus chooses to move us. We stay quite still, fallen silent, seen. All right, last poem I'm gonna read is a poem that just kind of fell into my lap in the form of things that appeared on my phone. It's called 36 Text Messages, 16 Missed Calls. 50 strangers are trying to reach me. They all want to know about 7 boxes of laminate that someone, not me, is giving away on Craigslist. The flooring is somewhere in Sacramento. They leave me their contact info. The inquiries range from casual, hey, my name's Jose. Do you still have the boxes? To formal, good evening. I am interested in the flooring. Some of them take a pleading tone. If you still have the flooring, I'll come and get it right now, triple question mark. One person says, I need flooring desperately. A lady named Dee writes a warm message signed, thank you very much. Linda writes twice. Ed seems pretty chill. I can take those off your hands. They are in Fair Oaks, Folsom, Citrus Heights. They are ready to come and get all 7 boxes of laminate flooring tomorrow morning, tonight, right now. They've been ready since yesterday and they don't know why they haven't yet heard back from me. They are friendly, cordial. They have learned my name from my voicemail greeting. So they say, hi, Chloe. Hi, Carly. Hello, Cleo. Hey, Cole. I can hear Cassandra's kids in the background. Everyone so full of hope. Everyone thanking me in advance on Craigslist, Sacramento. I find my listing. I ask the person who really is offering all that flooring for free to please correct the phone number so that at least one of these 52 people so far, of whom I've become quite fond, even protective, might be able to have what they wish for, gleaming new floors. May we all catch a little free beauty sometimes. May at least one of our earnest, desperate, hopeful calls be rewarded with bounty, with gifts unearned and earned, with free laminate flooring, enough to make one room at least like new. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. I really love the Mandela poems, and the idea behind them too is fantastic. Next up is Ryan Vine, who is the author of To Keep Him Hidden, winner of the Northeastern Minnesota Book Award, the Weldon Keys Award-winning chapbook Distant Engines, and the Chapbook Award. His poems have appeared in the American Poetry Review, Plowshares, The Rumpus, Poetry Ireland Review, Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, and on National Public Radio. His honors include the Greensboro Review's Robert Watson Poetry Prize, 3 McKnight ARAC Career Development Grants, an Artist Initiative Grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, a Walter E. Dagan Fellowship in Poetry from the Saucony Writers Conference, and he has been a finalist or nominee for numerous others, including, selected by Robert Pinsky, the Dorset Prize. Ryan is a member of the honors faculty and professor of English at the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth, Minnesota. Thank you, Ryan, for being here.
Thanks, David. I'm delighted to be here, and listening to that bio just makes me feel really old. You know, I'm like, oh man, what happened? But I really appreciate the invite, and it's delightful to hear all your work. It's wonderful. I loved your poems, John and Chloe and Tom. That long one was wild. And why have I not thought, this is maybe my 5th or 6th Zoom reading, why aren't we all putting our poems up on the screen as we read them? That was wonderful. I'm like, that, yeah, man. So give me a good idea for next time for sure. So I'll be reading poems from To Keep Him Hidden, just a few. This came out in 2018. I'll be reading 2 rules, which form the kind of backbone of the book. And this is Rule 18. Remember that man in the Radisson bathroom rubbing his red chest with a rag, his clothes in a pile on the counter? He looked at least 60, all smiles and still retarded by his father's rage. Oh, that man, he said. The things he did to me and my mother, friend, you wouldn't believe. They made me stronger. And you thought you knew denial. Who are you now, saying you could stop paying attention as if you had worked hard enough already? Sometimes it's a matter of feeling yourself in an elevator, push up through the floors like a finger through saran wrap, or simply a matter of hearing hillside bells in Little Italy. Look, friend, you must remember, the God you chose opened you like an oven and placed in you his favorite dish to simmer until you're ready, your head like a buzzer, to take it out and eat it. And I followed some rules when writing the rules myself. There's a lot of internal rhyme and often rhyming couplet and an allusion in every one. And the allusion in this one's pretty obvious. Those of you who know your snake poems, right? This is Rule 25. You missed your chance again. You weren't paying attention, friend, worrying of what could be when one of the lords of life appeared, stretched across the sunny patch of the Lake Superior hiking trail right beneath your feet, and you, friend, you stepped on its head. Even though it was a half step, the soft pressure and a popping snapping you back, it was still too late for this little artery of sunlight, this silly little grin on the ground. It twisted itself and wrinkled, shook and wrestled itself into Ouroboros, which is not infinity, but a constant repetition. Like you, friend, always you, away, even now, thinking about poetry and symbolism and myth, while this tiny yellow fellow dies muddy and twitching at your feet. There must be somewhere where no one's watching. But you didn't wait to see. You just kept on walking down the trail and stepped into a boggy acre the forest must have imagined, where you may or may not still be. Rule 8, do you remember Philip Larkin's poem, The Trees, right? An unresting castles thresh in full-grown thickness every May. Rule 8, you piece of shit, you dumb fuck. Nearly every weekday noon, a man and a woman walk past my house, always in the same direction. He's hunched and shuffles a little with a black hoodie over his head, and she's in sweatpants, smoking cigs a few steps behind him in hats pulled low. She talks to his back like this, you dumbass, you shit brick. But I don't know, friend, who sets the slow pace. It's hard to tell, as it is with all lovers, if they are lovers. But she speaks the language of their love to her beloved's hidden face, you dipshit, you fuckhead. While he stares down the road, a dead end at an empty lot, where through unresting castles and long grass repossessing its place, chickadees lovingly flit, shooting their little lasers. And a few poems from Chapbook Ward that's just come out from Texas Review Press, their chapbook series. And Ward is a persona that I've been working with for, well, since 2006. And he first appeared in my first chapbook, and then he killed himself and to keep him hidden, but now he has arisen to spread the good word. He's essentially a trickster, right? He likes, his favorite pastime is just fucking with people, pretty much. Good word hunting. And early in the morning when the men left, high stepping through the snowy woods, Ward's girl snuck in and they made one upper bunk lump in the hunting shack's back room. The two stayed in bed till noon, reapplying Vaseline to their lips, sliding across each other's faces forward into forever. Then she had to get going, work and all. So when the men dragged their deer back to camp, threading trails of red snow through the trees, when they smoked and swore, laughed and spat, Ward tried to be one of them, a man not afraid to kill. With each bump of schnapps, each blazing cig, he moved farther and farther away from what he really wanted, to be back in bed, back as one lump where he knew he'd found what he'd spend the rest of his life hunting, but never kill, only wound and keep wounding. And the title of this one is, And When His Girlfriend Asks What Took So Long, He'll See Himself in the Mirror When He Lies. Ward's taking a shit at the Pioneer Bar, sitting in the only stall with a door when a man walks into the bathroom and says, "You gotta be kidding me. Is someone smoking crack in here?" Ward assumes smoking crack is a euphemism for shitting. So he says, "Sorry, man, it had to be done." The man says, "Well, will you sell me some?" Ward stares for a minute at his feet and the white tiles and black squares where tiles should be, then says, "Are you fucking with me, man?" "No, man, sell me some." "I'm taking a shit, dude," Ward says and leans forward to see if he can see the man through the crack between the stall walls. And there he is, wearing a faded pink sweater and looking down into the sink at his soapy hands, confused. "Are you telling me," Ward says, "that my shit smells like crack?" The man looks up into the mirror, surprised at what he sees there, and wipes his hands on his pants. "Let's pretend this conversation never happened," he says, and watches himself say. But before he turns to walk away, Ward leans back to leave him there, staring at himself, standing like a statue in the story. Hot take. Ward's all no thought, dumb muscle. It's amazing really how far he can get. Puts his head down, Ward, and like a drill through bedrock sets in. Vroom, vroom, through his friends he pushes past. Vroom, mother, father, vroom, father, brother, sister, wife, son, daughter, vroom, vroom, his job, even death, the room. And here he is, finally to the place he's always wanted, pushing past, frictionless, inertia fed, tumbling forward into and through every goddamn day. And one last poem, something entirely different, inspired by Chloe, talking about her own children. My two had their vaccines today, and I've been writing in the last year or so. It took a lot of work though, Chloe, so I hear you. But in the last year or so, I've been reading a lot or writing a lot about our children. So this is preschool. And thank you again, David, and thank you all. Preschool. We're walking to the car, crunching snow across the yard, overburdened as usual with backpacks and books and lunches and bags, when my son says, "You would make a good grave." "What?" I say. "My gun could do that." "You don't have a gun," I remind him, as he climbs into his car seat and waits, smiling for the familiar zip and click of the belt. "Dad," he says, staring down the finger gun inches from my face, "you're my best friend." Across the street, the birch look thinner and whiter in snow. I turn off the news, but too late, and drive slowly, so we can watch two crows tuck and shoot through the tangled branches, like the two he loves from his favorite storybook, Odin's Black Angels, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory sent out across the world each morning with the hope that they come back. Today, luckily, we unbuckle his seatbelt, and my son kisses my hand before we cross the street. Today, we hang his coat on the hook by his name, and he runs through the open door and into the bright room of children playing without saying goodbye. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ryan. The idea of Ouroboros not being infinity, being a repetition, is gonna be stuck in my head for a while now. Thank you. I love that. Our final reader is Jessica Cuello, whose book Liar was selected by Dorian Lux for the 2020 Barrow Street Book Prize. And her manuscript, Yours Creature, is forthcoming from Jackleg Press in the spring of 2023. Cuello is also the author of Hunt and Pricking. Cuello has been awarded the 2017 Central New York Book Award, the 2016 Washington Prize, the New Letters Poetry Prize, a Saltonstall Fellowship, and the New Ohio Review Poetry Prize. She is a poetry editor at Tahoma Literary Review and teaches French in Central New York.
Thanks, David. Feels really good to be here, hearing all of you on a Friday night. It's great to hear your poems, Ryan and Tom and Chloe and John. I'm going to start reading from my new book, Liar, came out last month, but I'm actually going to read from the screen because it's easier for my eyes. And John, you had a lot of poems with a mention of loneliness, so I'm going to start out with an ode to loneliness. You're a room with no doors, the innermost white ash of the fire, a wool coat with X's sewn on the inside. You are a liar. We lie side by side. You shape the ceiling face, sing from the iron vent. Can you guys, I can hear my husband listening downstairs. It's super distracting. I'm sorry. Hey, Ed, I can hear you. Sorry. I'm really sorry about that. My whole family's listening downstairs. You shape the ceiling face, sing from the iron vent, whisper to the one-armed boy. When the child wakes in the empty house, you are waiting. They say you live in fields of snow, but you hate starkness. I breathe your cold skin. You are a gravestone face, a nursery rhyme in the body, the old man who played knick-knack on my thumb. When the nurse's tender fingers touch your neck, you cry. Your nerves are pale strikes of lightning across the silent lake. We touch with just eyes. You read to rid yourself of invisibility, and at night become a lone toll booth worker, hunched with fluorescent desire. Limbo. I draw an eye on my notebook, a swirl of ink. I'm not sure whose, but it sees me when my brother can't. He lives with us, but died somewhere back in childhood. He won't say how. His limbs move well enough to walk to school and back, I've seen his vacant eye, seen him in the hallway in his same sweatshirt. He won't pronounce my name. He skips the I, he shuts his door. We once were close, walked hand in hand. Pre-language, we shared a bed. My notebook I is more alive than he. Grain of paper, welt of ink. It sees more than a dead boy. And because he does alive things, like sleep and eat, I can't mourn. My babysitter, Karen B., who was sent to Willard Asylum. There are only 2 photos of me as a child. She took them. She had no child. She had cool cigarettes and a job at the drugstore. She gave me the Crayola box with the built-in sharpener. 400 suitcases were stored in the attic of Willard Asylum for the Chronic Insane. She joined her twin brother there. She wore her black hair down. A child could admire it. She bought me an Easter basket, a stuffed rabbit whose fur rubbed off. She walked everywhere. She painted circles of blush on her cheeks. Loony, people said so. I mean grown-ups who saw signs, who passed her on our street before she started to call and say, remember. On the phone, she said, remember. Remember the date we killed her brother, forgetting he'd been committed. I took her hand and tagged along like an animal. She was perfect to a child. In 1995, when the asylum closed, an artist took photos of the 400 suitcases. The photos were put online, the contents laid out respectfully. In the open suitcases, belts, pocket knives, Lone Ranger cards, keys, ribbons, shoe polish, mirrors, pills, a fountain pen, a bottle of glycerin, a zither, kit of needles, bread ration card, the Gospel of John, a letter. Each suitcase had a name: Lena C., Lillian L., Mary T., Gloria P., Cassie M., Francis T., Marion R., Catherine S., Dimitri Z., Ruby C., Anthony C., FJL, Viola G., Alice T., Carrie L., Karen B., remember. I nod when the school's visiting doctor asks if I eat 3 meals a day. In my family, you recreate invisible and freeze like a rabbit. You do not cry. God can read your mind. In my family, you lie in the snow and dream how your birth happened. The rough edge of the tabletop, the knuckles of the artist father who paints all night in a disease, then leaves and leaves. No one confesses anything. The black and blue mother scrapes herself together, and into the world comes a baby with her mouth open. In my family, you tame your needs. You bite, but don't chew the winter leaves. You drink milk white snow from your mittens. And I'm not talking between poems because I can't see your faces, so it just feels weird. I'm just going to read 2 more. And this one is a pantoum that I messed with a little bit. Laundromat with single mother. We put our dirty clothes in trash bags and took a cab to the laundromat, where I gave her the cold shoulder. The windows were floor to ceiling glass. We took a cab to the laundromat where outsiders could see my cold mother through the floor to ceiling glass, getting us clean and see how we got mothered. Twice she birthed herself in us, she got us clean. A young mother who folded each piece of cloth. Twice she gave birth. Her clothes and ours touched her hands. She folded each piece. I buried my face in the warm clothes that touched her hands. I was the youngest child. I buried my face in the clothes. I was critic and girl, the youngest child. She stacked the piles in trash bags, ordered her critic and girl to keep an eye out for the cab. She carried out the trash bags when it was time to go, and we watched for the cab. I was a silent, cold shoulder. The cab honked at us to hurry, and she grabbed my cold shoulder in silence, like it was her own limb. That shirt makes you a whore because it's black. This is my only funny poem, but it's not fully funny. I paid for the horse shirt with my own money, bought it at the mall. It was buttoned down and satin to the touch. Who was this whore that had never kissed anyone, not even her mother, who would not menstruate until she was old enough to leave home, until she had tasted fat, the pleasure of its depth? Whoreness must have started at the sleepovers when we played hooker. We stripped for each other. No, whoreness started younger, at 3, at 2, at birth, in the womb, whoring with balled fists and floating in the whore sea. When the 11-year-olds played streetwalker, I was the best. What did the best mean? It meant no smile. It was shame in girl form, which was shame's first form. It meant relinquish the body. It meant do not eat in front of others. Do not pee in public bathrooms, not even school. It was the body in plain sight, but hidden. The girl's small cocked hip in the room of girls. Thank you, David. Thanks everyone for listening. Hi, Lena.
Thank you so much, Jess. I absolutely love the Pantoum. I think it's one of the hardest forms, and that was fantastic. All right, so yeah, I want to again thank all of my readers, Jessica, Tom, John, Ryan, Chloe. I'm assuming you're all still applauding them, but keep applauding them. I can't really tell via Zoom. Shout them out in the chats if you want. Definitely buy their books. All the links are in the chat. Please, please, please check them out. Support their work, support the presses that publish their amazing, amazing, amazing work. Again, thank you all for coming out tonight. Well, coming out tonight, staying in tonight and joining us. And I hope to do this again in about 4 weeks. So I think like December 8th or 9th. So hopefully everybody will come back. Again, thank you to all of my readers. And I hope to see everybody again soon.
Thanks so much, David. Thanks, everybody.